Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on From Standard to Practice, the UNECE Seed Potato Standard. We're pleased to co-host this webinar with the World Potato Congress. My name is Marit Nises, and I serve as the Secretary to the UNECE Working Party on Agricultural Quality Standards, based at the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, which develops standards for agricultural quality, commercial quality, and the seed potato standard is one of our long-serving standards. So I'm pleased to be here today on behalf of Elisabeth Turk, our director, who unfortunately could not be with us today. She sends her regrets. I'm pleased to introduce our eminent speakers for today and to say a few words about this webinar before we get going. So you might have seen that the EC has the seed potato standard that was adopted in 1963, and it was recently updated in 2025 last year. And this was quite a big update of the standard. So we are very pleased to be able to share with you today about these updates and about the implementation of this standard. So I have with me today the chair of the specialized section on standardization of seed potatoes, Ms. Hannah Kortema. And we have also our two vice chairs, Nigel Crump and Triona Davey. Nigel works for the Australian Seed Potato Industry Certification Authority and Triona for SASA in the United Kingdom. We also have with us Laura van Bezoven of the Netherlands, NAC, and Andre Wessels from Potato Certification Service South Africa. We're very grateful to have you all here to share with us your experiences and your knowledge about the standard and about certification. So a couple of housekeeping remarks. This is set up as a webinar, so participants will not be able to speak, but you will be able to submit your questions and comments in the Q&A function. So please not in the chat function, but through the Q&A function, as we will use chat for other communication purposes. And you heard that the recording is set, so we will be uploading after the webinar, we will upload a recording on the World Potato Congress website. So with that, we can move to, I will just say a few words about UNECE. Next, please. Here is about the Q&A tab. So UNECE, the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, was set up in 1947. It's one of the 5 regional commissions of the United Nations. So the aim of setting up was to promote pan-European economic integration through policy dialogue, through normative work like standards, and through technical cooperation. So we have 56 member states, of which 17 are what we call program countries, where we do capacity building and more deepened work. But the work on agricultural quality standards and several other work streams in ECE is actually open to a much broader set of countries. In the case of agricultural quality standards, the Working Party was established in 1949, and it is open for participation by all UN member states. The Working Party sets quality standards for fresh fruit and vegetables, dried fruit and nuts, meat, and seed potatoes. And the standard on seed potatoes that we will be talking about today was first adopted in 1963. So that's very briefly about us. And we will then move over to Miss Ellen Kuvenberg, who will introduce the World Potato Congress.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the UNECE for taking on this webinar and panel discussion today. It's a very important topic. We just briefly will introduce the World Potato Congress and who we are. The first Congress was held in 1993 in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, and since then the momentum has driven. We have 12 congresses to date around the globe. You can see in the bottom map, it gives you an indication of where the congresses have been held. So it's truly a global congress. It is It's a nonprofit organization, and it's run by a global group of directors and international advisors. And you can see too at the top map, it gives you an idea of how truly our representation is. We say that our international advisors have the pulse of the industry and the region of the world in which they represent. And we always value their input and guidance as well. Beyond that, our structure includes support systems. We have, as a nonprofit, we rely on contributors, and those contributors we refer to as sustaining partners. And they continue to support the mechanics, the day-to-day operations of the organization, and any new initiatives that we have moving forward through our strategic planning and any direction we receive from the global potato industry. One of those initiatives includes the Declaration of Dublin, which is something we've adopted after the Dublin Congress in 2022, where the Irish government was able to supply funding for 40 bursaries to attend that Congress. And since then, we've adopted this declaration and encourage others to as well. It allows for bursary support, again, which funding comes from the sustaining partners for that. And it allows us to foster relationships between private and public partners. And we promote knowledge sharing and collaboration through that. Another initiative most folks are familiar with now was the lobbying of member states of the UN so that we might have, so forming the International Day of the Potato, which has been something that was quite an amazing initiative by our director, Andre DeVoe, and our past president, Romain Cools, who moved that forward. This year on May 30th, we'll be celebrating our third International Day of the Potato, and we continue to work with the FAO in launching that. And the last thing I'd like to note, which is a very new initiative, which fell from the Australia Congress, is the International Working Groups, or thematic groups, which we call them. These are groups which have met informally from Congress to Congress, and we were asked after the Australia Congress in 2024 to formalize these groups. Those formations are in process. Some of them have already launched and taken off, and they will be officially launched at the Kenya Congress, which will be happening in October of this year. I won't take up any more of your time today. The focus really today is about the UNECE. If you have any questions about the World Potato Congress, Inc., you can find that on our website, and you'll also find a link to the World Potato Congress in Kenya. So if you have any questions about the Kenya Congress as well, you can find it there. So I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Helen, for those introductory remarks and welcome remarks, introduction to the World Potato Congress. So I'm pleased now to move on to the next agenda item, to Hanna Kortema, our chair of the specialized section, who will introduce the revised UNECE seed potato standard, why it matters. Hanna.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Hanna Kortema, and I am a director at the Finnish Food Authority in Finland, and I serve as the chair of the UNECE specialized section on standardization of seed potatoes. As we are all potato experts here, you know very well that profitable potato production begins with high-quality seed potatoes. When you use certified seed potatoes, the supply of potatoes to consumers is reliable and affordable. When you use certified seed potatoes, you have less wastage in potato production to the pest and disease. You will get increased profitability from high-yielding potato crops. And next, we go today. We focus on a particularly important document, the UNECE standard concerning the marketing and commercial quality control of seed potatoes. why we have this UNECE standard for seed potatoes. The standard provides a globally recognized framework for seed potato certification. It serves as a world reference that facilitates fair trade and defines the commercial quality control of seed potatoes. Most importantly, the standard harmonizes quality requirements. It can be applied in both export and import procedures of seed potatoes, and UNECE actively promotes its adoption international and regional seed schemes. In addition, UNECE supports capacity building efforts related to the seed potato production and certification. Who can use the UNECE standard for seed potatoes? The standard can be used by potato farmers and seed potato growers, companies involved in potato sector, seed potato exporters and buyers, and certification authorities. On the next slide, please. We can see what are the key elements of the standard. The UNECE standard is the only international framework covering all key aspects of seed potato certification. Its main components include varietal identity and varietal purity, generation, class, and traceability, pests, diseases, and defects affecting commercial quality or yield, external quality and physiology, sizing, and labeling. Next, we have one example of using UNECE standard in practice. The field inspection is one of the most critical steps in seed potato certification. How do you apply the standard in practice? You can start with the main text of the standard, which states that all seed potato crops certified under the standard must be inspected during the growing season. Then you can check the Annex 2, which provides the tolerances and minimum conditions for field inspection. And you can also use the UNECE guides for practical implementation. For field inspection, especially guide to seed potato field inspection, recommended practices, and guide to seed potato diseases, pests, and defects. These publications are extremely helpful in day-to-day work, especially when identifying diseases and pests in the field. 2025, we had a revision of the standard. Following the extensive review process launched in 2022, a fully revised version of the seed potato standard was adopted late 2025 after broad technical consultation. The standard dates back to the 1960s, and over the years it has been updated in small sections, which made it increasingly difficult to read. This was the first complete revision. The aim of the revision was to create a modern, clear, and consistent document. The core elements, classification, inspections, quality requirements, and labeling remain largely the same. However, several new sections were added. One of the most valuable additions is a chapter on traceability, which is a crucial component of seed potato certification. UNECE has developed several additional guides that support the implementation of the standard. Guide to the seed potato diseases, pests and defects, guide to seed potato field inspection, recommended practices, guide to seed potato lot inspection, recommended practices, guide on operating a seed potato certification service, capacity building guide for implementation of seed potato certification scheme, and a new guide on mini tuber production is under development, and we hope to approve it later this year. And there you can find the standard and the other guidance material. The standard of the seed potatoes and other guidance material is available for free on UNECE website, and you can see the link to that on the screen. So that concludes my presentation. So I'd like to thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for this introduction to the changes, to the value of the standard. And I should add that this standard is basically, it's developed through the involvement of all the experts of the specialized section in consultation with their networks. So the experts from all the countries come to our meetings and they do the work on this standard. So this is it's the product of the collaboration of all the experts that you see here and many others. So with that, I'm pleased to move to the next item, our expert panel, where Nigel Crump will moderate our speakers here, who will talk about their experience in implementing the standard and certification against the standard. So basically what's happening at the country level and what are the experiences. So without further ado, I hand over to Nigel to moderate this panel.
Thanks, Merit. What we're going to do is just have a very informal discussion amongst ourselves here, but we invite you to be participating in this as well. So just feel free to put in the Q&A chat, just so you know where it's working. Put in where you're from. Just tell us where you're from around the world. Put that into the Q&A now. I want to see if you can make it work. Put in where you're from around the world. This is the United Nations meeting. We want to see where you are around the world. So just put it into the chat while we're having the conversation, and we'll start having our own conversation about how we practically use the standard around the world. Trina, do you want to tell us about, it's an international reference we've had that, Hannah's just outlined about the reference that we have. What gives it confidence between the trading partners? What are the key elements you think from your perspective?
I think for me, well, in simple terms, I think the standard is a comprehensive certification scheme. So I think if a lot of countries adopt the scheme, then it means that all the countries are effectively singing from the same sheet. So in terms of requirements, so Hannah mentioned in the introduction who uses it. So it's farmers, companies, exporters, importers, certification agencies. So basically you have producers and farmers who understand what's expected of their crops in terms of the requirements. And then for the importers, so for the buyers and the customers, they also know what they expect as well. So I think because you've got that transparency at all levels, it makes it easier for people to understand what's actually required from them and how to meet those requirements. And the other thing I wanted to pick up on what Hannah said is that it's freely available to everyone. So, it can be very difficult finding regulations or legislation from other countries, but because this is available on the UNECE website, then everybody can go on and just access the document that they need.
So it's a true international language. We talk potato language really in terms of seed certification, gives us that common terminology.
Your computer is muted. There's a sound issue.
Okay, yep, that's muted. Okay. Yeah, so we've got the common language of seed potatoes, and from that we get integrity, I suppose, in the seed certification standard. And Andre, do you want to talk about what you think from what gives us the integrity? What's the key parts of the standard that gives that integrity?
Thank you, Nigel. In my experience, the integrity of seed potatoes rests on a few fundamental pillars. First, the independent oversight by a credible certification authority, because certification only has value if it's applied consistently and objectively. Secondly, clear standards and defined tolerances with structured inspection systems, supported by proper training, ensure decisions are made on measurable criteria. And third, full traceability, meaning seed potatoes can be tracked from the original source through every generation of multiplication.
So it's important to have that traceability and work our way through that. But different countries have different systems and different production types. So how does that help us, Laura? How does that help us having that common language?
Because, sorry, it starts with having the same definitions worldwide, having to understand from each other what you mean with very basic language. And if you have all the definitions written in the same way in a basic standard, people know how to start, and that helps with the fair trading, which Hannah mentioned in the beginning, because you really need to start somewhere, but having common definitions is very important.
So with that common definitions, I suppose we talk about tolerances, don't we? That's what we all talk about when it comes to seed certification. So does anyone want to talk to us about tolerances? Andre, Fiona, do you want to talk about what gives us what are those tolerances and what gives us a practical balance there?
I mean, we have to have tolerances, right? We're not going to trade on PBTC, and if it's zero tolerance across the board, then there's basically zero trade. Trade does stop overnight. But for me, the standard does really recognize that we have tolerances for pests and diseases, but it also recognizes that a quarantine pest in, say, country A might not be quarantine pest in country B. So it's kind of balancing the impact of that pest or disease on, production, the harvested crop, the potential control measures, and maybe risk of spread. So we do have to have tolerances in there, but I think we have tried to make it practical in the standard and recognize that there's got to be a little bit of give in a way in terms of some production systems, if that makes sense. But I guess at the same time, the standard, it's not mandatory, so countries can, tighten up on some of the tolerances if they want to. So in Scotland, for example, Dickia is nil tolerance, but we have a tolerance for Pectobacterium or blackleg. So individual countries can change it to suit their own production.
Just to build onto that, I think that tolerance is a balance between plant health protection and also the practical application of the scheme. Many of these tolerances are applied through visual inspections, where trained inspectors identify plants or tubers showing disease symptoms, and the standard provides clear thresholds which support consistent and objective decisions. At the same time, again, the tolerances remain practical because if standards are not achievable in the field, they quickly lose the credibility with the region or with the industry, and it becomes difficult to implement consistently.
So they're a good balance between the seed producer and the seed buyer, because the seed grower knows what they're going to grow to, and the seed buyer knows what they're actually getting as well. So that's the importance of having those tolerances. But I suppose how do we know how do we know something's certified? I suppose we've got to have labeling involved when we're doing it. How do we recognise that something is certified? Laura, do you want to tell us about the official labeling and the components of seed certification?
Yes. By having an official label, we at least know what you're buying and what the quality is, what you can expect when you're buying. So because a label gives a class and a grade, so you should know if a tolerance can be there or a disease can be there in a tiny bit or a bit more, and which can influence, of course, the product, or at least what you can expect when you plant the seed potatoes. So in that sense, it is the label gives a lot of information about every lot and what you can expect when you receive it.
And it's
Yeah.
traceability as well. So in terms of the producer inspections and things like that, so it's what Andre spoke about earlier. It's that kind of golden thread running through the whole production system. And the label is obviously a big part of that. There's a lot of information on the label.
And I would like to add that the label is a fundamental part confirming the credibility of the certification team. Yes, it has information, but once the label has been issued, it's a confirmation that that seed lot complied with the recommendation, with the requirements of the scheme.
Yeah.
So the standard gives us this common language. It also gives us this label, which acts as a passport for things to move around the world, which is quite relevant given the journey I've made to get to this meeting as well. So the passport was definitely a part of getting here. So the certification label is definitely part of allowing seed to move. And that gives us traceability. And that's a really important part of global agriculture now, is traceability. Hannah and Andre, do you want to talk us through about how this traceability aspects works in the seed certification?
Well, I think the traceability, like we already heard, that the traceability is really key element in seed potato certification, and I think it's especially important in those situations that something goes wrong. If there is some problem with a disease or something like that, then you can trace back even several generations. And in practice, how you do the traceability is the bookkeeping, data collection. So you have to keep all the data during the different steps of certification, and of, like you already mentioned, the label is really important. There is all important information. And when the seed supplier is collecting the data, he has to make it available to the certifying authorities if there's a need for that.
Just to add on again, the standard really places strong emphasis on the ability to trace the seed back. That is in terms of investigations or potential new pest entering the country. Each certification label has a unique identifier that is linked to a centralized database so that the seed lot can be traced once again quickly going forward.
So I think that another important advertisement here regarding the standard, we just talked about traceability, and a lot of that is really covered off in those guides that you're talking about in the presentation there. It's not only just the standard that we actually have that we've developed here, there's a whole heap of guides, such as what sort of records you need to maintain for traceability. Does anyone want to comment on the value of those guides? Like, it's not just the standard. I mean, it's about this technology. You mentioned the development of information on new diseases and the like, So does anyone want to have a comment on the guides as well?
I mean, I would say the guides are, I think they complement the standard really well. They're really good standalone documents. They go into much more detail. So in terms of guide to even operating a scheme or conducting the field inspections or the lot inspection, it goes into much more detail than what would actually be covered in the standard. So in terms of the guides, I think they're invaluable to run alongside the standard.
So we're still looking for those questions. It's great to see people have joined us from all around the world. Huge participation there, but want to see your questions now. Are there any questions coming through that you want to know about the standard or seed certification in general? Please put those comments in the Q&A there, and we'll get to those. And that's probably where we land now in terms of engagement and participation. So it's developed collaboratively. We talk about the participants coming here to Geneva and where we visit countries around the world. How do people get involved in the program? Hannah, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, United Nations meetings are open to all member countries of the United Nations. Well, we are mainly certifying authorities in these meetings, but the meetings are also open for non-governmental organizations. So we are quite open. We have a free active discussions, and you are very welcome to join the work.
Laura, from your experience, what do you get out of coming along to the meetings?
A big network, because you started to know a lot of more people from different countries, and because you know them, you meet each other, you can discuss more easily issues or explain to each other what is going on, and without having the politics in there if it happens between two member states. So you can really learn from each other and not only talk to each other when there are issues going on.
My add to this, for us, for South Africa, this is significant value for us being involved in this process. This is opportunity to exchange knowledge, learn from certification systems, and ensure that the standard remains practical and science-based.
So I just see there's one of the questions that's come in the chat. We can see it there on the screen. How does the marketing aspect work? In other words, how do we raise awareness of the UNECE standards and ensure that information doesn't get stuck with governments and inspection services, but actually reaches potato growers and traders? Anyone want to weigh in on that one?
Well, one thing is that I just wrote an article on our local potato magazine in Finland. So, of course, we have to be active in our countries to spread the information about this work.
I think that's the important thing, even in this webinar, is actually promoting that. But I strongly encourage anyone that's interested in it in getting in contact with the Secretariat and getting involved in the UNECE program.
But not only that, also trading companies themselves, if they know of this, if they know of the UNECE standard and they're going to new countries and trying to explore markets there, they can still bring it along if they bump into issues and start having conversations if they want to set up a seed certification scheme, because it's a very basic and good standard, and you can start working from there. So it's not only for us as governmental institutions or certification agencies to bring the knowledge, but also everybody else can do that.
There's also a question there about which certification agencies are involved, and I think it's open to all countries to be involved. So strongly encourage participation in the meetings. They're very friendly, very welcoming meetings to be involved in, and certainly you'll get a lot out of it, the networking and the knowledge that's passed on. How is it relevant also to countries that don't have a formal seed scheme? This is a question I get often asked a lot. We don't have a formal seed scheme. We're starting out in production. How do you think those sort of countries can get involved, Hannah?
Well, I think we have excellent material for that. So if your country doesn't have this seed certification scheme at all, or you would like to improve it, I think our material is just for you. So we have special guides for how to operate as a seed potato certification service. Our guides are very practical, how to do the different steps of the certification. So I think that the free material that we have on our website is very, very useful for everyone. But of course, I also recommend that if you can join our group, that would give you a good contacts all over the world.
I think it's really important that networking that we all get out of it. I find it quite easily that if I've got an issue, I can either pick up the phone to Andre or Laura or Triona or anyone that's involved in the group, and we've built those relationships through the meetings and understand how different diseases and different tolerances are around the world. And there's a question there that, considering that disease incidence and severity vary across regions, how are such regional differences incorporated into the certification schemes, particularly in determining the application of tolerance thresholds? Does anyone want to comment on that? Like, we at the UN, we set it at a very high level, so it's a minimum standard, and countries can actually change their tolerances to suit their regional differences. And I think you touched on that before, Triona.
Yeah, so in the UK we do follow the standards recommended in the standard, but in Scotland, for example, we have a nil tolerance for dickia, so that would be the main difference in terms of where we have deviated from the standard, and I think that is quite different to some other countries. I'm not really sure about other European countries in dickia.
No, in European countries, we have a general tolerances for bacteria infections, black leg, but in Netherlands we are very strict. We don't want it, and if you find a plant with an bacteria infection, you're automatically downgraded some classes. But also with the tolerances, we are in the standard, we have separated them for 0 tolerances, diseases which we absolutely do not advise to have in the lot at all, or that we have tolerances where we know they can be there and they're not causing very big issues. So that's the reason they can be present in certain amounts.
So I think we can adapt it. And do you want to talk from South Africa's point of view? How do you use the standard, or do you use it? Like in Australia, we're using it as really as a guide. We don't embrace it entirely, but we use it as a guide for most of our certification, our standards. But the thresholds that we're doing, again, we picked on our regional differences. So, for example, things like dickia, we have a 0 tolerance to because it's a fairly new disease, and we put pressure on that. But I think each country can use the standard how it sees fit. It can either adopt it entirely, or it can actually adopt it in part.
I think the standard is a practical roadmap for each country to develop their own scheme, and there will be differences. Our tolerances for certain diseases will be not the same as other countries, but we also try to align with the standards, with the standard of seed potatoes.
I like it. We've got a language, we've got a passport, and now we've got a roadmap. I actually like how we're actually going through this here. We're getting there. What's our target audience? There's a question there from Yap. Who is the target group for the UNECE standard? Do you have an example of a country or region that is using the standard? So it's sort of related to what we're talking about there before. Anyone want to comment on that one? So
yeah, I think the target is seed potato growers, farmers, the companies in potato sector, exporters, buyers, and certifying authorities. So very wide range of who is involved in this.
I think it reflects even our agenda over the next few days. We're actually talking about everything from climate change right through to apical stem cuttings or root cuttings, right through to new or diseases, soil-borne diseases and alike. So there's always something that's always changing, and it's always addressing target information. So in terms of future development, I'm waiting for more questions there, guys, too, on the chat as well. So maybe we'll just test again if it's working. Anyone got a question? I see there's a question about seed certification in Canada. Yes, I'm aware there's a seed certification in Canada, and years ago the Canadian group did participate in the meeting, but we haven't seen our friends from Canada for a while. So a big shout out to our friends in Canada. They could join us and come along.
I can maybe add that on our website, we have a list of national designated authorities for seed potato certification. So Canada is listed on that list, but have not been attending meetings lately.
But everyone is welcome. There's no country that's excluded. We're all joined to talk that potato language. So looking at the future, guys, where do we see the future development? So we've just heard Hannah speak about, 1963, the standard was and revised in 2025. It's over 60 years old. Where do you guys see the greatest opportunity for future development? Where do you see us going? We'll go. Anyone want to put their hand up to that one, Andre?
Maybe the continued development of digital traceability and electronic certification systems, which will improve transparency and efficiency. But at the same time, technologies such as drones or spectral imagery or predictive disease models to offer new opportunities to monitor the seed potato certification scheme.
So technology is really going to be drivers for the future. I mean, we've really got that basis in our standard there, but that technology is going to be really exciting into the future where we end up and how we apply it. Trina, you want to add anything?
Maybe new techniques as well. So we've been talking about true potato seed and how that might fit into the standard as well. And that's something obviously that we've been spending quite a lot of time talking about. But we've got these new techniques, and I think everything is evolving very rapidly in terms of agricultural practices as well. Andre mentioned drones, and that's something that isn't that great in Scotland just because of the weather and the wind and things like that. Even new and emerging pests and diseases, that's something that we've discussed a lot with climate change. With a lot of differences between the northern and southern hemispheres in terms of pests and diseases. So we've already achieved loads, but there's still loads of ground for us to cover as well, I think.
Do you want to add anything, Laura?
As long as people grow seed potatoes, we keep on having new developments. So we have to make sure that legislation will never block new developments, but are supporting them, because you don't want that the developments are stopped by legislation, even if it is just a standard, because it can be translated into legislation.
I think it's also important, I think, that language as well, and the same as Trina was saying about new diseases, but sometimes it's just reclassification of old diseases. And we saw that with the Erwinias, the Erwinias were once blackleg, and now we've got all the Pectobacterias and Dickias. So it always makes us need to refresh and renew how those standards are applied as well. So it's good to see that development there. But in terms of how we actually go forward with developing capacity in newly developed schemes, there's a challenge there, Hannah, of how we're going to actually reach out to those groups. And I mean, they're formalising a scheme, but maybe they're still working with the basis of getting clean seed. And the importance of having clean seed has been well demonstrated, I suppose. That clean seed is very important to potato production globally.
Yes. You are actually right. And I think especially the early starting material is the key element. And I'm very happy that now we are preparing this mini tuber guide where we will have all description how to produce the very early material. We have micropropagation, mini tubers, microtubers, plantless, and material like that. So I think that's really a key aspect in this discussion.
Yeah, I think those guides are again, they're something we can be really proud of at the UN, of how we've actually developed those guides and how they are relevant to all parts of the world potato production system. There's a comment there about diseases changing from temperate. So it's Dina. Big shout out to Dina there in Kenya. The possibility that some diseases that are not so problematic in temperate conditions could become problematic under tropical conditions. PCN and blackleg, which are not present in Kenya some years back, are becoming a major problem at the moment. Absolutely. And I think that's, again, why we see things around the world changing with different climate, because we have different disease and insect pressure. And we're seeing that even in our home countries, I think, as well, that things are changing. They haven't stayed the same since 1963. So hence we've had to revise the standard. Anyone else want to comment on the different climates that we see potato production in? I think another aspect is the trading aspect of that as well. So often it's not about the potatoes being produced in a region, but it's where they're being traded to. And I know in Australia we're trading from a temperate environment into some of the tropical areas, into Indonesia and Thailand and the like. And often we need to be aware of the conditions where that seed is ending up. So that's another important aspect of the standard. It's not about just our potato production, but it's actually where we're trading and our partners that we're trading with. Okay, any more questions coming through on that chat? We know you're from all around the world. I think that I saw at one stage there was 138 participants there. So any more questions you want to know about the UNECE standard or seed certification in general? We've covered off who can attend the meetings. We welcome anyone to attend the meetings. More than welcome. And I think there'll be links to get involved sent out after the webinar.
You're looking at the Q&A also, or the chat?
I'm just looking at the chat. Pectobacteria is becoming an issue in the subtropical and Asian and African countries. Need to look at and to revise the tolerances.
To deal with increasing use.
So the bacterial ones are really interesting. We've had to deal with that here in Australia as well, but again, these emerging diseases and different climates are causing us to relook at those, and I think it's a common thread amongst all our schemes, that we're always constantly looking at our local production and how these new strains or new pathogens are evolving. And I think we've all had to look at that and look at how we're addressing that, whether it's changing from the visual scheme and supporting it with diagnostics. Anyone else want to comment on that? So there's another question there. Do we have an idea of what proportion of producers across the world use the UNECE standards? We wouldn't have an idea, would we, of who's using it?
No.
No, it's very difficult to measure, I suppose. I think the way we see it is that we're always active at the meetings. There's always definitely a long agenda of future work. So we continue doing that, and there's always a lot of input from both seed certification authorities and companies in driving that agenda. But it would be interesting to know, but it's very hard to actually measure.
And I will add that in some other of the standards, we are currently looking at doing surveys of private sector to try and grasp that, but it's a slightly difficult area because it's the standard is voluntary. So when it's used on a voluntary basis, it would require reaching out to the private sector to understand the degree to which it is used. But in the sense that the standard is translated into national certification schemes, there we would have an idea of how much is certified under the national certification schemes.
So there's another question here, and I think, is the standard for certified true potato seed production currently being prepared? I'll hand that to Laura, straight to Laura.
No, it's on the wish list to do, but a TPS is, at least in Europe, still a very new concept, and we are still getting more and more experience with it. But so far in Europe, we don't have legislation, and at the moment in this group, we don't have any other members from other countries who do have experience with it. So yeah, we in the future we'll do it, but yeah, we need to get we need to have enough experience with it to write a good basic for TPS, so that everybody can benefit from it. And at the moment, that is too difficult.
It's definitely been on our agenda, though, hasn't it? I mean,
Yes.
We're looking as the technology progresses. It's something we've been all looking at, and interested in the technology and just how it will fit into modern production systems.
Yeah.
There's a question there about a few African countries can currently get involved in setting the global standards. What is the process for more African designated authorities to join the UNECE? I just encourage any designated authority or certifying authority around the world to reach out, get in touch with the Secretariat and get involved. it's not really just about setting global standards, but it's about how you engage your local standards with the global standards as well. It's how do we actually build that? I think that's right, guys. Any comments on that?
No, I would agree. I would agree with that. Yeah.
So please reach out to the Secretariat if you're interested in participating in these meetings.
So we've covered off on true potato seed. I think there was another question there I saw there from Malawi, but I can't see the question now. Can you just scroll?
Scroll up also a bit. There's on PCR testing, there's a question.
There's the Malawi one. Yep. In Malawi, most of our farmers are still using formal or recycled seed. How can we realistically start moving these smallholders towards the UNECE standard without making the cost of certification too high for them? This is a really good question. So it's the cost of certification, having a formal program versus having clean seed production. So, guys, what do we think on that one?
Well, I could start with that the key elements of the seed potato certification, they are still based on visual inspection. So it's more like, I think Andre already mentioned, the training the inspectors and doing the visual inspection. So you can, I think you can start with quite low cost certification, but of course, if you want to include some laboratory testing or production of early material, then you have to think it over. But I think the main steps, the field inspection, lot inspection, is still based on visual inspection.
I think it's about also being aware of those costs too. So we're not saying, I think, that people have to jump straight from a informal program to a formal registered program. We understand in parts of the world that's not possible, but it's the principles behind the standard that actually work. It's the visual inspection. It's knowing about getting true, accurate diagnosis, making sure you've got the right pest or disease that you're looking for, making sure you're aware that that's impact on potato production as well. So it's not always about building that cost associated with a formal program, but it's about that knowledge and capacity building to actually be able to address the issues of having clean seed. And I think on the website, we actually have a poster on the awareness of clean seed in potato production as well. So the group has been aware of this for some time, and it's something we continue need to work on, but make that connection where we can on education and awareness of what's needed behind true clean seed potatoes. Any other comments on that one?
Well, I was just going to say that this is where the guides would come in really useful because of the extra information that supplements the standard. So thinking about the smallholders, it's getting hold of those guides from the website and getting that information from the extra information that's not in the standard, getting that information from those guides.
All right, so I'm just looking if there's any more questions coming through. Is there one that we got highlighted?
PCR, did we talk about that one?
Does the standard tell us something about cold chain of transportation of seed potatoes? Actually,
No.
I don't think it does, no. So we don't talk about it, but we talk about the pre-inspections beforehand. So really that's part of the supply chain. We're looking at the point of when it is packed, ready for marketing and distribution. That's really when the certification program ceases. Yeah, so that's how we see it. So it's not really about cold storing. How do we deal with increasing use of PCR testing? Are these always necessary for good agricultural practice? Anyone want to wade into that one?
No, we have to be careful that we don't start testing for the sake of testing, because knowing everything is not always the solution. So, and a PCR is a very good way of showing that something is present, but based on what on the previous question about costs, and you have to be careful what is necessary, and if you can see it visually, there are things that are necessary, could be necessary to test to see if it meets the tolerance, but if you can see it visually and you know it is there, you can also start from there. So it depends on how much you want to how much effort you want to put in if the PCR test is really necessary.
I think the standard is largely based on the presence of the disease as well, not on the presence of the pathogen.
Yes.
That's something we need to be always very mindful of. The PCR is really that step further. I know in some cases PCR works really well where you've got a zero tolerance and you're absolutely trying to keep it out. So that may be quite relevant in other places. So it's horses for courses where the technology fits. Any other comments on the technology for testing and diagnostics? I know around the world we all use it to some level. Really using it as a support tool for that visual inspection, though. It's not a replacement to the visual inspection. It's really a support tool to that.
One more question.
So a couple more questions there. How can the UNECE seed potato standard be adapted to accommodate the high genetic and phenotypic diversity around the Indian native potato land races, especially pigmented varieties conserved by local farmers? That's a really interesting question. I think the way it can be accommodated, again, it's about, you talk about the genetic diversity and the phenotypic diversity. That's one aspect of the scheme, is actually looking at how we can actually ensure that they're true to type and making sure they're producing that volume. But it's also, I suppose, about the conservation of these local varieties and making sure if they are conserved in a way that they remain disease and pest free. I think that's one of the aspects that could actually be used there. Anyone else want to comment on that one?
I would say that the standard would, it is not really mentioned this genetic material, but I think it is not against that. It is supports also that kind of material.
I think it is in part in the way we describe variety purity and variety identity. I mean, if it is described that a variety has that many pigments or that many colors in there, then people know it, and then you can use that as a basis to determine if it is meeting up the tolerance for the variety purity and identity later on in the scheme.
And I think we have a final question that we
Final question there. So if a country in Latin America complies with the UNECE seed potato standards, would it be allowed to export seed tubers to other countries? Anyone want to take that one on?
I mean, it wouldn't be a given, so there would obviously need to be discussions, so bilateral discussions in terms of trade. But it's definitely a good starting point in terms of, following the requirements of the standard.
I mean, there'd always be phytosanitary regulations and that would be on top of the standard, but that, as you say, it'd be a good point to go with.
Yeah, but I think the standard supports the possibility to export, but there was always these national requirements, so you need to discuss here.
So what you're saying in the case that national requirements, because you were saying before that sometimes national requirements might be set above this minimum standard. So that's what you're kind of talking about, right?
Yeah.
The standard is a good starting point in terms of minimum requirements, but sometimes there are national requirements that are above that, and of course there are phytosanitary.
It starts the language for the discussion.
Yes.
It gives the passport for the discussion, and it gives the roadmap for how you actually achieve it. So on those points, I think I'll leave it there and hand back to the secretary.
So thank you so much for this very interesting discussion, and thank you to all the participants for your active involvement, for your questions in the Q&A. This was very interesting, and in the next couple of days we will be talking also not only about the standard and about the guides, we will also talk about capacity building, what kind of capacity building might be needed in the future. So please feel free to write to us about what you see the email. Maybe you send it again in the chat. agristandards@un.org. We will send it again in the chat so that you can send us if you have any questions or if you have any requests for capacity building, any ideas for capacity building that would be needed from these eminent groups of experts. Because we plan to do more webinars in the future, so we like to hear from you. So with that, thank you so much again for joining today. I will just end by saying that the recording will be available on the website of the World Potato Congress. Once available, we will also put a link from our website. So with that,
One more slide, haven't we?
yeah, I think that's basically what that slide says. Oh yes, we had a pitch for the next World Potato Congress also. Nigel, you want to do that pitch as the World Potato? Nigel is also the WPC secretary. So.
But just speaking on behalf of the World Potato Congress here, just mark your calendars for the next World Potato Congress, October 26 to 30 in Kenya. The program's starting to come together. There's an excellent array of speakers. Love to see you there. And we can talk more about seed potatoes, hopefully there as well.
So thank you so much. And until next time, we look forward to hearing from you.